I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Hi, I'm Marika Moore, and if you want to get all up in my business, you should check out my new book, Unsolicited Marriage Advice, where I provide an analysis of the best marriage advice that I've received over the past 16 years or so. So head on over to Amazon and buy it now.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the Black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% Black all the time. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Man Listen Show. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. Click that bell icon so you can be notified when the show comes back on. And just tell everybody about the blackest radio show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'm your host, Mark B. Let's bring the crew in. All right, just the fellas today. Shout out to Rika and C. But man, you know, I don't know, man, Lab. It seems like to me, bro, there hasn't really been a whole lot of debate or coverage about this upcoming election. You know, you mentioned it in the past. You was very profound when you said it, that it seems that people already have their mind made up, and it's really about the two different parties being able to get their bases out and to get them to vote. I saw that there was an article when they talked about Vice President Kamala Harris and, you know, one of the voting groups that is growing and emerging, the Asian community. And they talked about how, like, you know, they're growing as a community, and they have a vote that is to be respected because they may be able to swing these elections, because, you know, it's tight. You know, the little polls I've seen, it's super, super tight. It's going to come down to these swing states. But, you know, the Asians were saying, listen, y'all need to respect our vote because we can make it go one way or the other. And it made me think how, you know, we always talked about how the Democrats, they have not always done right by the Black community. We talked about how sometimes it feels as if it's a hostage vote, especially when it's come down to the last two elections. You know, this being the third, where we had Trump on the ballot. I do feel as if the Democrats heard the Black community during the last election. We talked about Biden bringing some tangible things to the table, but seeing that article about the Asians saying, listen, you need to respect our vote. And I've been guilty of on this show saying, hey, look, I'm just not trying to get Trump in office. But I think there's a danger in putting ourselves in that position. We need to still always have an ask. So I'm gonna actually put your thinking cap on. There's one or two things that you feel like we as a Black community, we should have an ask for whatever party that's in office, right? Because even if the Democrats don't win, it's the Republicans, even though Republicans have shown, you know, their contempt for Black people in all facets. What's our ask if we would say, okay, you know, what do you want for the Black community? What would you start off with?
Man, that's a really good question. And like you said, we really haven't touched on it the last, definitely not this election cycle, just because we know, or I guess the last two, what we don't want. And it's like it doesn't even matter what the Democrats are coming to the table with. We just don't want the other guy to win. And yeah, it's not a bad situation. It's definitely a bad situation. Off the top right now, I would say it has to do something with, to me, I think the first thing has to be something about economic inequalities that are systematic, that have been basically the linchpin of what we constitute as the United States of America right now. So it has to be something to address historic inequalities and historic, what do you want to call it? Get people getting taken advantage of, basically. I honestly couldn't tell you exactly what that is, though, and that's part of the problem too, though, is because when you say for the Black community, then what happens is they can do something to help the Black community, but in also they're going to throw in something that's going to help the larger society as a whole. So we say give everybody in the Black community a certain amount of money. If you just say give everybody a certain amount of money, they wouldn't do that. What they would do is they would give across the board. They would give everyone something, you know, and it's not anything tangible, because even though we get, you know, what we ask for, well, everyone else benefits from that as well, and we're still in the same position that we've been in. And so it's something that I don't think I can say exactly right now what we should ask for. It has to do something with economic policy, or I don't know how to address it though.
Yeah, I mean, we've always talked about in this show addressing the wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are several ways that you could skin that cat. The student loans.
Mm-hmm.
Biden administration has, you know, really carried that ball forward. I know several people who have had their student loans forgiven, and it's done amazing. It's had amazing benefits for the Black community in terms of how that's impacted people who, you know, maybe were taken advantage of by some of these educational institutions that were
Mm-hmm.
ripping people off, and then other people that just got into bad loans and then just in order to get an education. And
Right.
to me, that's had a immediate impact on the Black community. I think that, you know, that needs to be a message that they continue to send. That needs to be out in the forefront. Obviously, the judicial system. You know, we look at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Supreme
That
Court.
too.
So we talk about, you know, the brother Marcellus Williams, who was just
Yeah.
executed, who was
Yeah.
just executed, and you know there was evidence, or at least enough doubt, to where, you know, his life should have been not taken by the state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it went across the lines in terms of, you know, quote unquote liberals versus conservatives. So I mean, that's always been something that's been a strategy that people have, you know, always said, hey, listen, it ain't really about who's in the seat as the president. It's about
Right.
the Supreme Court. And now I think we really are seeing that, you know. So the folks
Yeah.
who said that back in the day, hey, you know, they was dropping science. Again, I think addressing the wealth gap has always been something that's on the forefront of my mind. One thing that is, when you say, can we do something specifically for Black people, the thing that the easy answer to that is always HBCUs. Even though HBCUs have been under attack,
Mm-hmm.
Black institutions are under attack. HBCUs are something that is specifically for Black students, Black people, even though other people attend them as well, you know, in small
Right.
numbers. That is something that they could specifically do for us. And I thought it was cool that, you know, Kamala Harris, they're doing the HBCU tour.
I saw homecoming tour. Yeah.
They're
Mm-hmm.
doing the tour. And, you know, when I looked at the schools that they were going to, I appreciated the strategy, because they were going to schools in North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania. They were going to the HBCUs in those swing states.
Yeah.
Going to the HBCUs in the swing states. Of course, they have Howard on there.
She got to go there. Yeah.
Graduated from Howard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I think, okay, that's good strategy, because the other thing is, like you said, this is about getting your base out.
Yeah.
And they have done everything they can, especially in North Carolina. You know, the state legislature in North Carolina did everything that they could to try to gerrymander and nullify the Black vote. So when you look at those students that are on campus, you know, getting them out, getting them to talk to their grandparents, they uncles and aunties, their parents, and say, hey, let's get out and vote. Let's get out and vote for the, you know, the side that's going to help us. I think that's a big deal, man. I really appreciated that strategy that they put forward when it came to that. So I would say definitely student loans for us who aren't in college anymore, and then I also would say continue to target, you know, what they're going to do for the HBCUs.
Yeah, definitely. That I thought that was a good strategy as well. The HBCU homecoming tour, and then you're right, increasing funding, because that's another thing that has been historically underfunded basically by every state and federal funding calculation, they've been underfunded for years, and it's time to get
especially
that
by the
get back.
states. Especially
Yeah,
by the states. When you look
especially
at the
by state. Yeah,
comparison of okay, how much the predominantly white institutions get from the states versus the black institutions, it's
right.
criminal, bro. It's
It,
criminal.
it is criminal. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's criminal. So that's something, and that is something that's always been the protective measure for black people is the federal government. Because
Yeah.
if you leave it to the devices of these states, they're gonna try to screw us every time.
Right.
Every
And
single
that's another thing that, just to interject real quick, when, a lot of times, like you hear people say, we want to give the power back to the states. That's exactly what they want to do, is they want to say, we want the states to be able to discriminate and withhold funds from black institutions, basically.
black people.
Yeah, black people, whether it's HBCUs, whether it's local school districts, funding for local police and everything like that is handled by the state.
There was, when we talk about the Supreme Court, there was, laws put into place that there was a set of southern states that any type of action that they put into place, any type of legislation that they put into place, it was subject to federal review. Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's people who can be able to go in deeper into it. Well, look it up. And that was rescinded. And it was like, hey, listen, we don't need this anymore. Racism is gone. Let's pull this back, right? And as soon as they pulled it back, that's when you started seeing them going after our voting rights.
Yeah.
That's when you seen them starting going after, the HBCUs, the black institutions like our universities, organizations, any type of funding that we get, you see them going and attacking that. And that's why you always see, when you hear them talking about draining the swamp, the federal government and all that, a lot of that is because, the federal government is one of the biggest employers of black people.
For sure. Yeah.
And just because, they had become more sophisticated with it, never forget that this country, the system that this country was built upon and remains, that keeps this country upheld, it relies upon us being at the bottom.
It has to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Us, black people, not minorities.
Exactly. Has to.
It relies on black people being at the bottom. So anything that they could do to undermine any type of progress that we're going to have, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why it's a clear answer on who we should be trying to put into office. We can debate on the effectiveness of that party, but we know the other party is clear. They're unrepentant, and they, have no qualms about, listen, this is what we're going to do. We talked about it. They talked about it, and they said it used to be Jim Crow, then it turned into James S. Esquire. And a lot of this is, legal cases, legal precedents. And one of our good frat brothers said it. He said, black people don't sue enough. We don't. And I think, man, he made an excellent point when he said that, because you just look at, the state of Missouri, a state that's near and dear to both of us. You look at the current attorney general and the things that he's put into place and things that he has fought and objectives he's put on his agenda, they've all negatively impacted black people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have. I mean, and even within it's crazy, even within the constraints or the confines of the University of Missouri specifically, when I think about that, that's, like you said, very near and dear to our hearts. But they want to keep the system. They just want to exclude us from the system. Mm-hmm. And it's not just Missouri, it's Georgia, they're trying to do it, Mississippi, they've been doing it, Tennessee, North Carolina, everywhere. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I'm okay with the strategy of the Harris Walz campaign. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that their focus needs to be on motivating people to vote. I'm saddened by, I don't even listen to it anymore, about the people like questioning her blackness. Because at this point, if it wasn't a black woman running, for office, it would still be somebody. For me, it would still be fuck Trump.
Right, exactly.
For me, it would still be fuck Trump. So I don't really get the point of, saying, well, like, oh, she's not black. What that was really ridiculous was, Janet coming out and talking, and people putting up juxtaposing like Kamala's Indian family versus the they were showing the Jacksons, and they was like, this is a black family, this is not. And I'm just like, put them up versus Trump's family. And
Right,
say, let's look at
exactly,
Trump's family and
exactly,
look and see how they think about this. Come on now.
exactly. And I've thought about that a lot, man, and not just the Janet situation, but just everybody coming out and saying something negative about Kamala. And I think it's kind of a function of just the time period that we're in too. So many people want attention.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, that's how they, I guess, quote unquote, make their living, is spewing ridiculousness and people clicking on it, and they get ad revenues from people clicking on their pages and things like that. And so it does become a game to some people. Some people honestly don't think that they really feel that way, but they know that if they question this or if they say this particular thing, it will get eyeballs on them.
A person that's extremely guilty of that is that sellout Jason Whitlock. I don't believe that he believes all the stupid shit that he says.
Yeah, I quit.
It's clear that he sold out.
Yeah.
He sold out 1,000%, and I don't even pay attention to him. He's almost, made himself such a joke that nobody really takes him seriously outside of the extreme right and conservatives. And it's kind of, not gonna say hypocritical, but we're an opinion-based show.
Yeah.
But I think that it has been to our detriment, to your point, that we have lost old school journalism.
Yeah.
Now, there's something to be said in terms of social media, podcasts, to where when I say we, talking about Black people, Black individuals, Black politicians, celebrities, athletes, where we can control our own narrative.
Yeah.
Shout out to the young sister, Angel Reese, because she said, I had to put my podcast out because the narrative in the media, they were just trying to paint me as the villain, right? Juxtaposing her against Caitlin Clark. I think that there's value in us being able to directly tell our story. However, I still think that there needs to be some fact-based news so that you have an informed populace that can really make decisions and not be swayed by opinions that may or may not be fact-based. When you look at, the Republicans, you look at what was the first time that that Trump ran, and they said alternative facts. No, motherfucker, it's lies.
Yeah, alternative facts. You're right. Yeah.
It's lies.
Basically, yeah.
It's lies. And
hey, that's James Esquire right there.
Right. And it goes to sports, politics, or whatever. You look at, now I've been critical of Prime, right? I talked about how, I love Prime. I wish nothing but success for him, but I talked about how, then you may talk too much, bro. I need to see a little bit more action. But it's clear that there are many in the media that have a vendetta against him for whatever reason. Maybe they don't like his hubris. Maybe they want to knock him down a peg or what have you. But to me, I'm like, how is this? How are you able just to get away with this? Other than, listen, if we talk about this N-word, we're going to get clicks.
Yeah.
We're going to get subscriptions because, the white boys want to see that.
Exactly. They do.
They want to see that. Skip Bayless, his whole career. Yeah, you mentioned before he was big with the Cowboys, but I think even then, I gotta assume that it was him talking about their lowlights, talking about Irvin and them partying. What was it, the White House they had or whatever?
That's what they called it. Yeah,
it had to be him talking about that or what have you. But his whole career was built off bashing a black man. And the sad thing about it is we got a lot of brothers and sisters who bought into that. Whether you like, his team, whether you like his style of play or whatever, how you let this man sway you into hating a guy who, you know, on the surface, has been a good family man, raised his children to be, you know, good kids, took care of his wife, publicly loves on his black wife, you know, reinvested in the community, reinvested in business and giving opportunities to black people. But you allow somebody to guide your thought process into where like you can't really stand this man, and everything is, you know, how can we bring down LeBron? We got to find some way to get a balance, bro, to where we have, like I said, the media that is responsible media, and have us be able to tell our stories, give our opinions without having it being misconstrued or just basically flat out lied upon. Right. Those in the media don't have, you know, the best of intentions for us.
Yeah, it's definitely been a slippery slope for a while, as far as when it comes to old school traditional journalism, quote unquote journalism. And you know, like you said, there are pros and there are cons to having basically everyone has the opportunity to control their narrative somewhat or put out, you know, their perspective, and let people understand them. But I think that's also a function of um it's a monetary aspect of it as well, because the reason that journalism traditional has gone by the wayside is because they saw the shock jocks capitalizing monetarily. And so all these conglomerates, basically, you know, all the newspapers in the country are owned by probably two or three, you know, the Dallas Morning News owns the Detroit Free Press, you know, all of them are in, I'm not gonna say in cahoots, but they're owned by, you know, very limited number of people. And when you have that, it's all about the bottom line. And so when they're chasing that dollar, they really don't care about what they're putting out. There used to be a integrity or a responsibility that people felt they had, but the newspaper doesn't do it because social media doesn't do it, and social media doesn't do it because they just want to get the money, and so it all goes back to that.
It's the clicks, it's the impressions, it's all those things. You know, I think that because I remember when athletes were taking the power back, you know, with Twitter, Instagram, but mainly Twitter, by being able to put out, okay, no, this is my side of the story. Sometimes that worked to their detriment, and sometimes it was, you know, to give them the ability to, hey, listen, let me put out the narrative that I want to put out about me and my career and what I'm doing. And I remember there was some pushback, especially Stephen A. Smith. He talked about, hey, you know, y'all need the media, because when something happens, and something will happen, you need one of us to be able to help you tell the story the right way. And my thing was like, man, who the fuck is you, man? You know, the facts are the facts. And we see, I mean, we still the blackest radio show on the internet, but I got to bring it up. You know, Pete Rose just passed away. You know, Pete Rose and his actions, whether people feel like he should have been put in the Hall of Fame or not, the power that the media had in terms of, you know, not allowing him to be in the Hall of Fame, his legacy, him being able to come back from whatever happened. I mean, hell, we can bring it back to blackness. We can bring it back to Barry Bonds.
I was just about to say that. Barry Bonds still alive.
Barry, one thing about Barry, you know, best baseball player ever, at least that I've seen. And maybe people, you know, before him that I didn't grow up seeing, but the best baseball player I've ever seen. And he's not in the Hall of Fame because people believe that he was on the juice. But hell, shit, they was all on the goddamn juice.
Yeah, regardless.
The pitchers, everybody was on the juice. Right? If that's the case. But because he didn't really mess with the media, he was like, nah, I don't. Who are you? I don't need to talk to you. You know, because of his disposition with the media, they're never going to allow him to get in because they're still holding that vendetta. And it's probably, I don't know the makeup of the people who vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame, but I'm assuming that a good majority of them is like old white men.
Oh, 100%. It's not even close. It's not too many black baseball writers in the country, and that's who actually does the Hall of Fame voting for baseball, is the Writers Association. Yeah.
So when you look at that, and then you look at, okay, they probably want McGuire in there, They probably want, you know,
Clemens, yeah.
Clemens and all that. They were in white, but they're like, nah, we can't have you, bro, because if we put you in, we have to put this motherfucker in.
Dang Barry Bonds. Yeah.
Right. Well, man, yeah, I just want to see. I mean, like I said, I think it's irresponsible of us to not, you know, talk about, hey, what's our ask? I think, you know, two of the things that we talked about, obviously, you know, the HBCUs, you know, addressing the wealth gap, you know, easy way to go at that is to continue to go after the student loans. Obviously, it hasn't been in the news as much lately. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, or maybe some of the legislation that's been put into place has started to have a positive impact. But you know, it was hot and heavy about police brutality and law enforcement and how they were, you know, really singling out the Black community. I think there needs to be a continued focus on that as well.
Yep.
So there are things that the Democratic Party can put out and say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing for you, specifically Black people. And it still be something that, you know, other folks can say, okay, well, all right, we're still getting, you know, we're not being excluded. You know,
right.
you can go to an HBCU, you can get your student loan forgiven. So, you know, that the whole Barack Obama a rising tide lifts all boats. You know, there's a way for you to spin it, but you know, I hope that they can, I hope they continue to you know, push that strategy that they have, you know, targeting these swing states. I put together a local strategy with people I know, because North Carolina, you look at the state of North Carolina, it could probably decide, you know, you got North Carolina, you got Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. So you look at those swing states, and you know, I live in a stark red state. I live in Texas. So yes,
it's about to be purple. It's almost purple.
They fighting it. They fighting it now. They fighting it big time, right? You know, through those dirty tricks, man. You know, attacking our voting rights in Harris County and Houston and in Dallas County. They know it. But when you look at me in terms of my vote, yes, symbolically, I'm never going to vote for Trump ever. But how can I be an impact? How can I help affect change? And maybe that's sending my resources to those organizations that are doing work in those swing states to get people out to vote, to get people registered, to make people aware of what's at stake in this upcoming election. And I would like for, you know, everybody to try to maybe think along those lines to say, hey, listen, how can we affect change? You know, you may live in a state like you, Lab, where it's like, hey, yo, my vote actually matters.
Yeah.
My vote matters. But for some of us, you know, unfortunately, it's not like that. So we got to be able to get creative to try to make sure we keep that motherfucker out of office. But hey,
for sure,
it's more and more ridiculous, dog. Like me and you used to say, like sometimes like the shit be kind of funny because it's so ignorant. Now it's like, nah, dog, I can't even.
You can't. There's no reason to justify. I don't know, man. Anybody, it makes me question you. If you have any type of justification for that, for his actions, you know. Now, if you tell me I'm gonna hold my nose and vote for him because, you know, he's gonna get our justices in and stuff like that, then I don't like it, but I will respect you a lot more than people that are just Trumpers, basically.
That might have flown the first time. Because I heard that from people. They was like, yo, you know, for me, it's about the Supreme Court. Basically, they was like, it's about maintaining white supremacy. They real good at not saying it, but saying it.
Like I said earlier, that's
if you learn how to listen,
states' rights stuff. Yeah.
If you learn how to listen, you know, there's certain that states' right is like an obvious dog whistle.
Yeah.
But there's some that sometimes they're a little bit more subtle. They're more subtle with it. You know, they want out say, now this, you know, there's some that will, you know, obviously, but I remember I had to learn when folks they would talk about certain towns I would go into for work, and they would be like quote unquote sundown towns, or like they definitely were I hate Black people town.
Yeah.
And other folks would talk about it, you know, white people would talk about it. And I picked up on how they were trying to warn me without violating their code. Because we talk about a code for Black people, there's a code for white supremacy, and they know not to violate it. So their way of trying to tip me off was like, yeah, you know, they kind of different up there.
Mhm.
And I started picking up on it. I was like, okay. Okay. I know what you mean. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, for sure. Or they just don't say anything. So
Right,
anyway,
exactly.
man, I think we got to get back on task. We got to get back on helping, motivate people to get out. The whole, Diddy thing has been a big distraction. We could talk about that afterwards because he ain't going to try no time soon. He ain't going nowhere no time soon because they ain't gave him bail because he out here
Right.
witness intimidating and all that. Man, they said they had 120 more people came out,
Yeah, you see, he's
and some of them minors.
yeah, it's it's interesting, like we talked about in the last show. A lot of times when you have money, not just what come to Diddy and influence, you can get away with a lot of stuff, man. So it's sad. Man.
Yeah. Anyway, man, I think we talked about it enough. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at manlistenshow. Go to the link in our bio on Instagram. You can buy our merch. Hoodie season is around the corner. You can get you a hoodie like I got on right now. You can go buy our books. I got a book. Rika got like 3 books. And you can also hit our Cash App, help support the show. We appreciate you. Watching next time. Peace.